another episode of Well-Adjusted Mama. I'm your host, Dr. Laura Brayton, and today's guest is Marc Sklar. He's a fertility expert, and he's a recognized leader in the field of fertility and reproductive health. Marc is the creator of MarcSklar.com and reproductivewellness.com, and he's the author of Secret to Conception. Marc has been studying, practicing, and educating others about alternative medicine for more than 15 years in his clinics in Southern California. After completing his undergraduate degree in Comparative Religion at the University of Florida, he experienced an illness and learned what Oriental medicine was while searching for the most effective way to recover. That experience was a catalyst to expand his studies of Asian religions to include Oriental medicine. To pursue his interests, Marc explored the Middle East, India, and Nepal. Upon returning to the United States, he moved to San Diego to pursue and complete his Master's of Science in Traditional Oriental Medicine at the Pacific College of Oriental Medicine. Marc has studied with many prominent figures in Oriental medicine with additional certification in the treatment of infertility and women's health. He also trained at the Harvard Medical School Mind-Body Medical Institute. Marc's interest in fertility and reproductive disorders took a personal turn when his brother and sister-in-law struggled with infertility issues during the early years of their marriage. With Marc's expert guidance, his brother and wife now have 4 healthy children in the form of 2 sets of twins. His natural talents in this area have led to hundreds more successful births for couples who were previously struggling with infertility. Marc lives in San Diego with his wife and 2 sons. Welcome to the show, Marc.
Thank you so much, Laura.
I'm so happy to have you here.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So, yes, this is exciting. I know this is a topic that you're so passionate about. I mean, just everything I researched on you just really shows, your passion for helping families and couples, conceive their dream of having a child. So I'm just so curious to kind of hear a little bit more about where your passion for this topic came from. I know about your brother and sister-in-law. What was going on even before then?
Well, that's a great question because it did start before then. Funny because I've had this conversation recently with some of my coworkers, and when I was growing up and I was just a kid, people always came to me with their problems. And interestingly enough, most of the people who came to me with their problems were my girlfriends, right? So I never thought much about it, but I was always interested in healthcare. And so I ended up getting into natural healthcare because of my own digestive issues. Growing up, they were somewhat lifelong issues. And when I got to graduate school and was studying Chinese medicine, I had started working with one of the local acupuncturists from my first semester at school, and just by chance, I wasn't really supposed to be working with her. I was supposed to be working with somebody else, and one thing happened, and so she asked me if I wanted to work with her. I said, sure, and I knew nothing about her or her practice whatsoever, but it was one of the best things that happened to me because her practice was all devoted to women's health and fertility. And it was not something that I thought that I would really enjoy doing or following, but I loved it. It was from the first patient that I saw that she treated, I realized what kind of a profound effect we could have on families and women and individuals. And so that really spawned my interest in women's health and infertility. And so all of my training while I was in school, I kept steering it personally in that direction. I followed her and several others through all of my education. And then when I was an intern at school, all the other practitioners at school were treating pain because that's primarily what came into the clinic. But I'm sure in your school clinic you didn't go out and market yourself or anything like that. It's just, whoever came in, right? And so all the people who came in to see me were women coming in for women's health issues. And so I knew at that point this is what my calling was. This is the direction I had to go in. I'm a firm believer of listening to yourself, listening to the world, and following the signs that come. And not trying to force things. And so that's really how my path has always been. And that's what led me through most of my life, whether it was education or travel or whatnot. And so I held true to that motto, if you will, when I was in school, and just followed what came my way and what I was passionate about, and that's what led me here.
That's such a beautiful story. It was really divinely guided. I mean, you clearly had a passion for natural health care and Chinese medicine, but not necessarily for women's health and fertility until you ended up in that doctor's office.
Yeah,
Cool.
It's true. And the thing that actually sealed the deal for me, if you will, was I was the first woman I ever helped conceive. She came in. She had PCOS. For those who don't know, it's polycystic ovarian syndrome. It's the most common female endocrine disorder. And she and we were working together. You know, it's a 6-month story, so it's a relatively long story. But we were working together, and she wasn't getting her. She got one cycle, and so we were very confident that we can get her to have another menstrual cycle. But it wasn't coming. And we were confused, and we didn't understand why, because we were doing all the right things, and she was doing great, listening to everything I recommended. And so one day she was in the clinic, and I asked her to just go take a pregnancy test, and sure enough, she was pregnant.
Wow.
And then, from then on, she followed me after school. After I graduated, I helped her conceive 3 out of her 4 children. And actually, the only picture on my desk outside of my 2 boys is her first daughter, who I helped her conceive. It sits in a little frame right on my desk, just to remind me of that day and kind of the journey that I've taken. So as much as I helped her, she helped really kind of guide and structure me down this path. And then was my brother after that. So.
Wow, I just got chill bumps. That's a really intense story. You're like, where's her period? And it's like, oh, she's pregnant. That's why she's not bleeding. Oh my God, that's
exactly.
So cool.
Yeah.
And then you said also you were still an acupuncture student, right? When you started helping your brother and your sister-in-law.
Yeah. So I helped her first, and then I was telling the story to my brother. And then he shared with me how, you know, they had been trying for a little bit and things weren't working out, and they were looking into other methods. And so we had a conversation, and I had a conversation with both of them, gave them just some simple things that I thought they needed to start with and do at home. And that was really enough. I mean, they live in Miami, and I'm from Miami, but I live in San Diego now, and so I couldn't help them. I couldn't treat them with acupuncture at the time, but I could do all the other things. I can talk to them about diet and nutrition and supplements and herbs. So I was able to get them started with those other things, and that was enough for what they needed.
Yeah, and, you know, even just a referral probably to like a local acupuncturist that you could work in conjunction with.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually did refer them to someone, but they didn't want to work with anyone but me. So it was hard. It's also hard to treat your family, so you know you got to tread lightly there. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear that. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. And now 15 years later, it sounds like you've just had, you know, hundreds of success stories with helping families conceive naturally.
Yeah, it's really been a wonderful career, and for me, I just feel like I'm still just getting started. But you know, there's hard days. There's definitely hard days where a patient has a miscarriage, or they're just struggling because it's been so long, and they haven't had a pregnancy or been able to hold a pregnancy. But then I walk into the next room, and someone, you know, shows me a picture of their positive pregnancy test, and you know, it's balancing both of those things out. So, you know, in any given day, there's a lot of waves to ride, if you will, but it's really all the positive pregnancy tests and the little babies that I see come into the practice or get pictures of that really keep me going and let me know that it's worthwhile, it's a good cause, and it's something that I still need to be doing. Yeah,
I get that. So I was hoping you could share with our audience about the book that you wrote called Secrets to Conception, and share with us a little bit of the secrets that are contained in there.
Yeah, so I wrote this many years ago with a colleague and a psychologist, Dr. Sage Breslin. Sage and I worked together on with patients, and she and even now we still refer patients back and forth. She does a lot of wonderful work, and so we both had gone to the Harvard Mind-Body Institute for mind-body training, and that was really the impetus for the book itself. So the book covers a lot of different things. It covers some bit of Chinese medicine and nutrition and supplements and so forth, but it's really geared towards allowing patients to get in touch with why the root cause psychologically and mentally for what's causing their struggles or what's contributing to their struggles. And so one of the beauties of the book, so it's a book that goes over the principles. Then there's a workbook that goes with it that allows patients to, it gives them exercises and homework to work through certain areas and topics and ideas. And then additionally, there's a set of MP3 downloads that are meditations and guided meditations that you have Sage's voice guiding patients through it. And so together, we created this, and we felt like it needed to be 3 parts because it's easy to talk about something, but if they can't work through it in the workbook, it's hard for them to put that reality into practice in their own life. And then we go through different types of visualizations and meditations that I think there's like 10 or 12. But all of those aren't going to work for everybody. Some of those things I don't care for personally, but I care for other ones. So it's not intended that everyone's going to want or really be practically able to do all of those meditations, but they're going to gravitate towards 2, 3, or 4, whatever number it is, and then they can start to utilize those in their daily practice. So it gives them just little techniques on just guided meditation or different ways to relax that they didn't know of that were possible for them specifically, that they enjoy because they'd never been exposed to it, so now they're exposed to it. So one of the beauties that I really like about the workbook, aside from all the kind of general touching base ideas, is that it really allows them to check in with themselves, both on a mental and physical capacity. From a physical capacity, it allows them to analyze their diet. It allows them to objectively look at what they're doing and what they're eating, because the amount of patients that walk into my practice and say, oh, yeah, I eat great. I eat really, really well. I'm like, okay, I believe you. Yeah. Now, why don't you do a diet journal for me? 5 days, write down everything you eat and drink, and you have to promise one thing. And they always say, what is that one thing? I'm like, you can't eat better because you're documenting it for me. I'm not going to get mad or upset. Just write it down the way it looks, the way it really is, and then we'll look at it objectively and then go through it and make changes. And so one of the things that workbook does is it allows them to look back on everything they've eaten, let's say for a week, and be able to objectively go over, well, wow, I didn't realize I eat that many M&Ms in a day. I thought it was just a couple, right, or whatever it is. And so then they could realize, hey, this is really what I'm doing. I'm not drinking enough water. I am eating too much of this, and so on. Some patients do need a little bit more personalized attention when it comes to adjustments or recommendations with their diet, and so they could always reach out to us for that. But it's designed for them to be able to make those changes on their own, right? And then aside from the nutrition perspective, it does go into how they relate to themselves, what the self-talk is that they are brainwashing themselves to believe about either themselves or being a mom or a parent or conception or birth. And then, again, it allows them to objectively look at their relationship with their husband or partner and what's that relationship about and delve a little bit deeper into that. And so it allows them to explore areas that we, quite frankly, as individuals, because we get so wrapped up in our regular routine, we don't spend enough time in or doing, right?
Mm-hmm. That sounds really fascinating and important. I love that there's 3 parts to it.
Yeah, sorry, I was just taking a sip of water. We felt like that was really important. It was one of the things that we thought were missing. And it's actually why I guess we could have sold them separately, but ideally it's something that it all goes together. Yeah.
Yeah, it's holistic.
Yeah, exactly. And, one of the things that I've been recently looking at with patients is trying to get patients to recognize that they create their world and their reality, right? And I think it's a hard concept for many of us to understand.
Yeah.
It's something that I've seen true in my life, and I firmly believe. And so the hard part is that if something negative happens in our life and we say to ourselves, well, I didn't ask for that. I didn't create that. I didn't create this negative thing, whatever it might be. Why would I want to struggle with infertility? I didn't create this. And it's not that we consciously create those things. It's that we subconsciously do. It's the little things we tell ourselves that we're not realizing that we're telling ourselves that start to build up and create our reality, both good and bad. And so the workbook is designed to allow them to look at those things and be able to delve into that and realize what self-talk they are telling themselves and how to start to move past those things.
A few episodes ago on this podcast, we had Molly Nichols from Mind Belly Connection speak. Have you heard of her?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, and so she's, really the master in fertility visualization, and I just, and you're echoing that. Like we have our mind is the most powerful fertility organ that we have, and it's exciting to know that and to have that understanding and to put it to use from a very conscious place.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not that I'm denying that there could be a physical disruption as well, but you have to address both. You have to address both things, right? You can't just focus on one because it's only going to get you so far.
Yeah.
And so there's interestingly enough in Chinese medicine, and I don't know how much everybody knows who's listening about Chinese medicine, but there's a lot that gets talked about with regards to Chinese medicine as it relates to emotions. And our emotions, each emotion is tied to a specific organ. And so when it comes to conception, there's a direct correlation between and connection. They think that there's conceptually a thoroughfare or a channel that connects the heart, the actual heart, and the uterus. And so it's that concept of we have to be emotionally in the right place to allow our uterus to open up to be able to receive implantation and hold a pregnancy. And so that's very similar. They said it differently thousands of years ago in China, but essentially what they're saying is that there's a mind-body connection, and emotionally we need to be in a good place and be solid there so that we could allow ourselves to conceive.
Yeah. That's such a good point. And even, let's say there is a physical issue contributing to the infertility, addressing the underlying emotional cause to that physical issue is also extremely important. And your body has the ability to heal itself when you're become aware of that connection.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't remember when this was. I think it was about 15 years ago. There was a research study done out of the Harvard Mind Body Medicine Institute, and they had a support group, and they may still have a support group. I'm not quite sure, but they had a support group for infertility, and they did a research study with that support group. And what they learned was that couples and women who were going through infertility equated their struggles of infertility emotionally to as if they were going through some sort of life-threatening disease like cancer or cardiovascular disease or something like that. And I think for those who've never struggled with infertility, it's hard to believe, and it's hard to conceptualize, like, really? You're equating this to to that, but that's the way those couples felt it. They felt that it was so stressful on their life and their relationships that it was as if they were going through some life-threatening disease. And that just shows how much stress someone goes through when they're dealing with infertility, whether they're trying naturally or through IVF. And I think the stress increases and is compounded much more once they start, inseminations or IVF, because now you've got a whole other complicating factor involved that changes things, not to mention all the hormones that they're about to be given that throw us off hormonally and emotionally. So stress is a big factor when it comes to infertility, which is why, or one of the reasons why we created Secrets to Conception, because we want to help patients be able to manage that better.
Mm-hmm. Where can patients get your book?
They can get it off Amazon. On Amazon, the way Amazon works, you have to buy the book and then the workbook separate. And there's a link once they purchase the book and the workbook, that there's a link in there for the meditations. So it will send them to a link to download the meditations from there. And they don't have to pay for the meditations. It's just we included it as part of the book. And then once marcsklar.com is completed, which should be in the next week or so, they'll be able to purchase it off the website as well.
Okay, and can you just spell out your name so people can find the website?
Yeah, so it's MarcSklar.com.
Awesome. All right, very good. So that will be good so people can go to either place. And if they do go to Amazon, make sure you get the book and the workbook, even though they're sold separately, because they work together.
Exactly.
Cool. So that's exciting to know that that's a resource out there for listeners to pick up if they're not in the San Diego area, don't have direct access to you. So if a woman was to walk into your office, like a new patient, and was looking like some of the basics that you start off with your new clients of how to, what to do or what to avoid when they're actively trying to conceive, what would you say are some of the top few things for that?
It's a great question, one that I pretty much get asked every day, all day long. Yeah. It's difficult because a lot of it depends on each individual, not only the individual, but the condition they have, right? We would treat someone with endometriosis a little different than someone with PCOS or poor ovarian reserve or something like that. But, for me, most of it comes down to the basics. So my basics are, you've got to make sure that you are managing your stress properly, and we all have different tools or things that we gravitate towards for managing our stress. For me, I like to be outside. I want to go for a hike. I want to climb a mountain. If I can detach from my phone and the world and just be in nature, I'm gold, right? And for others, it's just sitting on the beach or reading a book or even going to a movie, right? It seems silly, but you escape into the movie and you kind of detach from the rest of the world. So, I encourage patients to, one, find outlets for stress, find and bring more joy into their life. Spend more time with good friends and family and bring more joy. Make sure you're laughing a lot and enjoying life. So cut out the stuff that you hate doing and that you don't enjoy doing and focus on the stuff that you do. Then it comes down to making sure that you're sleeping well. So I think most of us, we live in a culture where it's about accomplishments. How much can we get done? How quickly can we get it done? And how quickly can we move on to the next thing to work on, right? Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, two things suffer: our stress, our adrenals, and our sleep. So we tend to go to sleep later and wake up earlier. So I really try to harp on patients to get 7 to 8 hours or more of sleep a night and really work on balancing that out quite a bit. It was a funny story. I think it was probably about 12 years ago. I started working with a patient, and she came in, and we were trying to look at why she wasn't able to get pregnant, and we were just going through things. So after a couple of weeks, she was telling me about her routine, because invariably I always get to that with patients, like, tell me about your day, tell me about your week, let's talk about your routine. And so she says, okay, well, I wake up at 5 in the morning, and already I've got a red flag, and I'm like, well, why? She says, well, I want to wake up so I can go work out to de-stress. I'm like, okay. I don't comment. I just say, well, tell me about the rest of your day. And she goes on, I go to work, I do this, and then I'm in bed by about 11 or 12 o'clock at night and, and on to the next day. And I said, so are you tired? She says, yeah. I'm like, do you think there's another time in the day that you could find time to, work out to de-stress? She's like, well, maybe. I'm like, okay, so this is what I want you to do. You can't wake up earlier than 7 a.m., and you can't go to sleep later than 11, and you can work out. I want you to work out, but you can't do it, 5 o'clock or at the expense of your sleep. So you've got to find another time in the day to do it. In a month, she was pregnant.
Yeah.
So, sometimes it's as simple as that. Not always, but sometimes it is. And so that's where I learned the value of sleep and how important that is for patients. Additionally, the other basics are just making sure that we're hydrated, drinking enough fluid, that we are eating clean, fresh cooked, fresh food, minimal or no packaged or processed food, and really just trying to clean that portion of things up. And those for me are the basics, as well as coming up with like some of the foundational things that I like patients to do with nutritional supplements. And so then working with them to find out what they're taking, what they're not taking, and then a lot of times patients are getting their vitamins from GNC or Costco or CVS or something like that. So it's also then about quality, like cleaning up the crappy vitamins that they're taking and getting them on better quality ones. That doesn't necessarily have to happen with everything. I want to be cost conscious as well for them, but there are definitely places where you can do that and places where you can't.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of crappy supplements either. Like if you're going to spend the money, spend the extra few dollars, get it through a healthcare professional who's prescribing specifically what your body needs, and buy the best quality. I mean, it's so important.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if they're not able to do that, I tell them don't waste their money. Like, don't buy the CVS brand of a prenatal.
No, just invest it in your diet, right? The organic vegetables and fruits and eat very cleanly. That's the best place to spend your money, and then the supplements would be additional.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I love, do you have any other, like, lifestyle things that you were going to include in that?
No, I mean, I think exercise is important. I think in this day and age, with all the extreme workouts that are out there, I think many patients can overdo it. But on the flip side, I think there's plenty of patients who don't do a thing and can underdo it, right? So it's really about, my motto is moderation and balance. I don't think we all need to be doing CrossFit every day, but that might work for some people. I don't think we all need to be in a Bikram yoga class, but I think yoga is great, right? So it's about finding balance for each individual, and really kind of gravitating towards that and making that a routine for ourselves, and finding the proper way to make that a routine for ourselves. So I do think exercise is really important, but not to overdo it or underdo it. I think some people are like, well, if I can't go run a marathon, what's the point of going outside and exercising? Well, I think there's a lot of points to it, and I would say at the very least, just get outside and move and walk, right? Mm-hmm. And so, or don't stay stuck in your desk by a computer all day, and stand up and move, even if you have to work at your desk. So I think there's ways to manage that and manage that better than what our current culture is doing, and it's about working with patients to be able to do that. I will say, just as a side note, if there's things that I do kind of put on my avoid list, when it comes to exercise, it's hot yoga or Bikram yoga, for the specific reason that all the patients that I see who are yoga instructors who can't get pregnant all practice and teach Bikram or hot yoga. Mm-hmm. It's too extreme. It's too draining on patients. So I really steer patients away from that. And then if there's another no-no when it comes to nutrition in my world, it's avoid at all cost soy products in any form.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
And you want to explain why soy is a no-no for someone trying to get pregnant?
Yeah, it's a phytoestrogen. It can cause all sorts of issues, and we have enough estrogenic causing chemicals in our environment and in our food that we don't need to add any more and kind of help facilitate that process. A lot of patients I see are estrogen dominant.
Right.
That's not always because they have too much estrogen. Sometimes it's because they don't have enough progesterone, but it can wreak havoc on the endocrine system. And so I'm very weary, especially since I still know that even though I'm going to ask patients to get rid of estrogen, that they're probably still going to get rid of soy, that they're probably still going to get some soy byproducts in their diet and in their day that I can't avoid. So it's why I tend to be so extreme on one side when it comes to that. I did, like yesterday I got the argument from a patient of mine who said, well, because I was looking at her diet and she had tons of soy products in her diet. And she's Asian, which is probably more common to see that in. And so she said, but how about all the research that shows that Asian cultures do fine with soy and so on and so forth? And I said, well, here's my issue is in all of those countries, you're not having soy milk and soy hot dogs and soy cheese and soy byproducts in this and then the soy oil here and so on, right? You're maybe getting a little bit. Or like when you go into the Chinese restaurant and you order a dish, it's eggplant with tofu, which means the majority of the dish is eggplant with a tad bit of tofu. And if you've ordered it, you've seen that what I'm saying is true. But if you go to an Americanized Chinese restaurant, it's tofu with eggplant. Right, because we focus on the protein. So it's a lot of tofu with a little bit of eggplant, which is very different. So if you were just getting a tad bit of soy, maybe I could live with it, but it just doesn't tend to be the case in America. So I ask patients to avoid it.
Yeah, not to mention GMO. I mean, over 95% of our soy in the United States is genetically modified, and I don't believe that's an issue as much in the Asian countries.
Correct. Yeah, I didn't even go into that, but it's an excellent point.
Yeah. Wow. And, everything you were mentioning regarding lifestyle, like just, eating cleanly, getting proper rest and proper movement of your body, this is good advice for everybody. Like we all can, thrive with these basics, right? This is not just someone trying to conceive. And one other point I do also want to bring up, and I'm sure you do this in your office, this work is not just for the woman. The preconception work, or I shouldn't even say work, but lifestyle, this clean lifestyle is for both partners.
Absolutely. I can't stress that enough. 35 to 45% of the time, it's a male factor or jointly, male and female factor that's causing the fertility issues. It often gets overlooked. And unfortunately, I have patients who come in and be like, we've been trying for years. I'm like, well, first and foremost, has your husband been checked? No. Okay, let's not waste any more time there, right? Especially for how easy it is to test sperm, right? It's just a sperm sample, and yes, as uncomfortable as a man might be trying to give a sample, let's be real. It's just a sample. They've probably done it before. It's not that big of a deal. They could move on and do that in comparison to what we always ask the women to do. And all the testing and hormones and ultrasounds and so forth that have to be done for them, this is really a drop in the bucket. So I really encourage men to get checked and tested, especially since there's so much that we can do and offer for that, that I do think that that's a really important piece to get mentioned and unfortunately often gets overlooked. And as you mentioned, the recommendations that I was making could be used for everybody. It's just for general health, right? Well, interestingly enough, pretty much usually if someone's having a fertility issue, male or female, it's a sign that there's an underlying issue going on in the body of a greater imbalance, right? This is just a byproduct of that imbalance because our bodies are meant to survive first and foremost. Secondarily, they're meant to reproduce. So if something's happening and you're not able to reproduce, it usually means that there's something greater happening that's also hindering potentially survival, which is why your body is prioritizing where it's sending its resources and how it's allocating those. So, it's not just about being healthy for conception, it's about being healthy for the rest of our life. With patients with PCOS, for instance, which is one of my pet peeves because I think it's completely poorly managed in Western medicine, is, polycystic ovarian syndrome is a sign of a greater imbalance, and patients are now more predisposed later in life to having diabetes and cardiovascular disease. Well, for me, yes, would I like patients to have a regular menstrual cycle and conceive? Absolutely. But it's sometimes even more of a concern for me that now they are going to be, their health is going to be compromised later in life with potentially diabetes and cardiovascular disease. If I told everybody when they were conscious enough to recognize it, let's just say 18 to 20, like, do you think it's important to treat now if you knew that you were predisposed to having cardiovascular disease and diabetes? 90% of people who knew anything, or 100% of people who knew anything, would say yes, right? But they're not. It's being completely ignored. So PCOS, they don't even bring it up in consultations. Their OBs don't even bring it up. They just say, okay, well, here's the pill. Let's just regulate your cycle. That's not really dealing with the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it goes beyond just reproduction. It goes it's about living a healthy life, not being a burden on yourself, your family, our community, being able to have a healthy enough life that you're there to take care of and enjoy the fruits of your labor, which is your children, and being able to pass on healthy genes. I talked to someone yesterday who had a severe case of PCOS, and I said, look, we need to get this under control, not just for you, but for your kids. Because if you get it under control now, then the likelihood when you're pregnant of passing on those genes to your kids decreases dramatically. So it's not just about us, it's about our kids and their kids and the world we live in. So we have to look at things beyond just ourselves, and the impact that our decisions and our health has on others.
Wow. I mean, that's such a valuable point, too. If someone's having challenges conceiving, one perspective could be that this is actually a blessing. Our body is giving us information that there's an imbalance, either in the woman or the man's body or both. And this is an opportunity to make changes. Lifestyle changes can be challenging for a lot of us, but when there's that motivation, that carrot, so to speak, dangling, that it's like this, I'm motivated to be the best version of me in order to, number one, get pregnant, and then number two, get pregnant with a healthy baby that I'm passing along healthy genes. I mean, that's a lot of motivation there.
I agree. I mean, I think I know you're familiar with the word, but many people aren't out there. Epigenetics, it gets discussed quite a bit right now, and it's about the way we live, the world we live in, and how it affects our cells and our health and our DNA. And, it goes beyond just ourselves. And I think we often forget that. We remember it when we become parents. So when we become parents, our decisions completely change. You have someone to care for, and you will do anything for them, right? So many of us will go into debt for them. We will work 3 jobs to take care of them and support them. And you hear these stories over and over and over again, right? But it starts much earlier than that. Think of yourself now as if you are already a mom. Would you be making this decision if you already had a child? If the answer is no, you should be making a different decision, right? So it's about taking that into perspective and having a different perspective on how you approach life. It doesn't mean that you now can't have fun or do anything that you enjoy doing. It just means there should be more balance and moderation, and it might deter you from making certain decisions. When I was 20, I jumped out of a plane because I wanted to experience skydiving, right? I've got 2 boys now. I'm not jumping out of a plane. So it's just you make different decisions. So I think the way we live now and how our health is when we're pregnant and preconception, especially for men, because that's the only time we can influence genetically the embryo, is dramatic and extremely important. And if we are the best version of ourselves before we get pregnant, and especially during pregnancy, then the genetics that we're passing on to our kids are the best that they can get.
And, you know, we're seeing more and more like chronic childhood illnesses, you know, becoming epidemic in the United States. And I think it's so important to really look at, you know, what the causal factors are. And there's multiple causal factors, in my opinion, but one of them certainly is genetics. And, you know, we can alter our genes through our lifestyle, which is what epigenetics is. So, you know, why not be empowered to make smart, healthy choices with your lifestyle and to have the best genes possible to pass along to your offspring?
I couldn't agree with you anymore. Amen.
Amen. Got Bruce Lipton. He's just, you know, he took us out of our victim, well, everyone in my family has this disease, so I'm going to have it too, to the opposite, which is, you know, genes don't rule our lives. We can really impact how they turn on and turn off based on our lifestyle, based on our thoughts. So, you know, if you're considering becoming a parent, this is the best time to start looking at that lifestyle and making the improvements now. I mean, when you're working with someone pre-conception, you know, ideally, do you ever have like 6 month to 1 year window before they're actually trying to get pregnant? Does that ever walk in your office?
Yes, especially
probably more rarely.
Well, it doesn't happen as much, unfortunately, but the population that I do see it happen with more specifically are women with PCOS, and the reason for that is because they just typically don't have a regular menstrual cycle, so it kind of buys me more time, and they recognize, like, I haven't had a regular menstrual cycle most of my life, and I'm in a serious relationship or just got married. We want to start having kids, so I need to start dealing with this. So that's really the population that I'll see it more so with. I don't see it as much overall because most of unfortunately, a lot of patients that come to see us, they've tried a lot of other things, and so time is working against them. But I do ask for patients to try to give me a little bit of time, at least 3 to 6 months, to see what we can do. And that's not always possible for everyone, so we try to meet them where they're at and do the best we can. But in a perfect world, yeah, I would love 3 to 6 months without patients even trying so we can regulate things and then give them the go-ahead.
Yeah, so they're detoxing, they're cleaning out their body before they even actually try to conceive.
Right.
Yeah, that would be ideal.
Yeah, it would be great.
Do you have any cool case studies that you'd like to share? I mean, you've shared a couple already.
Yeah. You know, I've got a ton. I think one topic that we haven't really addressed today is those couples who are going through IVF or have, or, you know, that area. And, you know, I hear quite often from, you know, the reality is when you walk into an IVF clinic, you're going to be told negative things. Your labs don't look good. You need to move towards IVF or donor. The first thing I can tell everybody is I've seen it all happen over my 15 years of practice, so I don't believe that just because somebody says one thing that it's dogmatic and that you have to buy into it.
Right.
Second is I have patients who have had 5 failed IVF cycles and then they come to me and are able to conceive. Or they still decide to do another IVF cycle with us and they're able to conceive. You know, so I really don't feel like assuming that someone has a regular menstrual cycle, they are producing enough eggs and so forth, I think 80% of patients move towards IVF prematurely or unnecessarily. And I would say that the one deciding factor that I really talk to patients about before they make any decision about what the next step is, it's always a time factor. Do you have enough time personally, or do you feel like you have enough time to give it an opportunity in a certain area? Because if you don't, that's going to make your decision on should you be moving forward with IVF. And that time factor is nothing that I could determine for you. You could be 30 or 25, and I think you've got plenty of time, but you've been trying for 5 years, and so you're just frustrated and fed up. And so you're ready to move on to the next step. So that's always something that I try to talk to patients about. But, in terms of a case study with IVF, I have patients who have had, one specifically, she had 5 IVF cycles, all with different clinics for the most part. And they were all very different. And until she found the right clinic with the right medication and the right protocol and the right combination of time with us to work with her in advance and leading up to the cycle and the cycle itself, was she able to have a successful IVF cycle, and she only produced 1 healthy embryo. That she produced 4 healthy embryos that were genetically tested. One of them was normal. They froze it, and then the following cycle we transferred, and that's when we saw a positive pregnancy, and now she's able to hold it. And I think she's about 30 weeks pregnant right now. And I've been working with her for years, right? So sometimes things just don't just happen so quickly. And we need to give it a little bit of time. We all have our own path. But I would say if you're determined to have a family, one way or another, there's opportunity and options for you.
That can give so much hope to listeners who are struggling with their fertility issues, and just to realize, looking for other, you don't have to stay at the same clinic. If it doesn't feel right, you're not getting the results you want, be smart, keep interviewing other doctors. And there's so many awesome modalities that if you are going to use, IUI or IVF, you can complement it with acupuncture, chiropractic, massage. There's so many wonderful, hypnotherapy. There's so many options to bring in, as a team approach to help support you in conceiving a healthy baby.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, do you have any last thoughts, Marc, that you want to share with our audience?
Just stay positive. There's so much negativity out there when it comes to fertility. I am a man that the glass is half full, not half empty, and I try to really stay positive with my patients, but be real and realistic. And so I think it's really important for us to stay positive, focus on the good things, and listen to ourselves and our bodies in terms of what we need to do next and which direction we need to go to be successful.
Thank you for those great last words. It's just really, like you said, keeping it simple, keeping it positive, and not allowing the process to be so overwhelming, and actually the process creating more stress than it's already there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thanks again.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much, Laura, for having me. I really enjoyed it. And, thank you.